un peu après.
Et puis sur Lyon, là,
Oui, il démarre, c'est ça, démarre dans une usine. Ouais, dans une...
Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour. Je me permets en fait, de m'instituer présentateur avec Benoît en tant que Cinémathèque suisse, évidemment. Je remercie l'ECAL d'accueillir cette masterclass. Ça commence à devenir une habitude puisqu'il y a eu plusieurs occasions de rencontres ici même depuis maintenant plus d'une année. Et je suis très heureux de cette collaboration qui cette fois-ci nous porte dans un pays de cinéma lointain et pourtant passionnant qui est la Chine avec Xiaolu Guo, à qui j'ai eu le plaisir de remettre un léopard d'or que le jury avait choisi en 2009 à Locarno et qui présente donc à partir d'aujourd'hui dans les salles de la Cinémathèque une intégrale de son œuvre. Je voulais juste donc vous rappeler surtout pour vous et tous vos camarades que la soirée de demain soir au Capitole va être composée à 19h d'une performance, j'ai toujours dit lecture performance en musique au Capitole, suivie de la projection à 21h ceci à 19h et à 21h de la projection de Sheer Chinese, précédée également par une séance de dédicace, puisqu'il faut le rappeler, Xiaolu Guo est cinéaste documentaire, cinéaste de fiction, cinéaste entre deux et romancière, puisqu'elle a écrit plusieurs livres qui sont sur cette table et qui ont été traduits en français avec beaucoup de succès d'ailleurs. Voilà, je suis très heureux de saluer qui va mener cette masterclass en compagnie de Carlo Chatrian, qui est le curateur de cette rétrospective, qui collabore avec la Cinémathèque depuis quelque temps et qui, par ailleurs, est collaborateur du Festival de Locarno, du Festival de Nyon, du Festival d'Aipopoli à Florence, et j'en oublie quelques-uns, qui travaille aussi pour la Film Commission de la vallée d'Aoste, et qui nous vient justement de la vallée d'Aoste ou d'Ost en français.
D'Ost.
D'Ost.
C'est pas si important, je pense.
Vallée d'Aoste ou vallée d'Ost. Voilà. Merci.
Merci. Alors, je suis un peu embêté parce que tout ce que vient de dire Frédéric Maire était des choses que je voulais un peu parler pour introduire la séance. Mais ce qui est peut-être curieux, et puis pour relancer un petit peu le débat qu'on a, c'est que vous ne connaissez pas son travail. Enfin, je crois que pour la majeure partie d'entre vous, vous ne connaissez ni ses livres, ni ses films. Et du coup, ça sera l'occasion dans cette séance discussion de comprendre un peu ce mouvement, cette énergie de cette réalisatrice chinoise et de voir quel a été son parcours. C'est quelqu'un de très jeune, puisque c'est quelqu'un qui est né en 73, mais qui a une œuvre abondante, que 7 romans et 8 films, plus que Lionel Beyer, ce qui est quand même déjà assez incroyable pour le signaler, et une reconnaissance internationale à tous les niveaux, avec un parcours assez curieux, enfin peut-être simple, mais en partant d'un petit village au bord de la mer en Chine, puis une école de cinéma à Pékin, puis finalement une installation en Grande-Bretagne. Et je pense que c'est de tout ça qu'on va parler, et que j'espère ça créera une dynamique et des questions de votre part pendant cette discussion. Je pense qu'on va faire un premier mouvement discussion sur son parcours jusqu'à 1h, et ensuite on fera une petite pause, et puis jusqu'à midi, pardon, et ensuite on fera une petite pause et on s'arrêtera à 1h pour aller déjeuner. Voilà. Allons-y. J'y vais, je ferme juste la porte.
D'accord.
Merci.
Just close the door. Coming back.
No, you go.
No, I stay a moment.
You're very busy.
Please.
Good morning. I'm sorry I will speak English. So I also think maybe during my talk or during the clips, you can ask something if you have burning desire want to ask. So feel free and really like free form. But also here I work with Philippe, my sound designer, sound and music. for most of my films. So if you have question for sound and music side, Philip is also here. I don't know if, Carol, you want to do some secret, whatever, your own words?
No, I think that Benoit has already introduced you,
Yeah.
and maybe it's good to start with
Some clips,
some
yeah,
clips
yeah.
of your film, because
Yeah.
since they don't know your...
Yeah. I think because my film has very poor distribution, also because most of them are documentary films, and as most of the young filmmakers starts from documentary filmmaking, or let's say home video, as I started very home video way, so slowly moved to the fiction, and most documentary where it's almost like exercise towards fiction. Oh, they never been distributed. And my films only Chinese, the last one, was distributed. And perhaps How's the Fish Today, my first feature, also in France and in America, but not in other country at all, not in Switzerland. And then after Chinese, I have finished the 2 feature films. One is called UFO in Her Eyes. It's adapted from my novel. I guess you will see it this winter, which we scheduled to release in Europe in this winter. And another film is more like guerrilla, self-made, self-funded film called A Proof of Cubic Love, which is I made it during this manifesto writing. I mean, when I mention manifesto, nowadays it sounds all like joke, you know, like someone bored at home writing manifesto. But in my case, it's serious, yeah. But anyway, so these are the 2 films. I think maybe I start to show beginning clips of my very, very first film called Far and Near. My first short film, just to see how I started. And I think maybe echo to your way of filmmaking, which is very really self-made, self-learned. Although we all went to film school, but filmmaking is something else, which you not necessarily do it in a film school. So I just started from my first film, which is I think I can't remember 8 years ago.
Xiaolu, maybe just to before making this film, you were already a writer of novel, or
yeah.
Because this, I think, it's important to say.
I mean, my background is really starts from a novelist or poet or writer. I guess this is different situation as I'm a native Chinese. In China, it's kind of 2 way, you know, how you make films. One way is, as you hear, we, like me as well, go to the film school in Beijing, which is the best film school in Asia. And then you stay there, you meet all your comrades, your colleague from year when you were 18, and then you come out 22, and then you do MA, and then you found all your teams. And that's one way. Another way is really more or less some filmmakers are or artists, or we are writers or painters, mostly are painters. And I guess something like 10 years ago, we have this video camera in China everywhere you can buy. You don't need to go to the film censorship office to ask permission, because in China you still need to get permission before you're shooting with your script, and after you're shooting you also need to get permission too, the censorship stamp. But I think the video camera really basically abolished those kind of rules. You can buy a video camera and then you start. So my background is both ways. Started as a writer when I was a teenager, and I published was very young. I published, so I was kind of in a way I had this confidence of storytelling, which in the West maybe not a typical storytelling, but it's more like essay, poetic narrative rather than dramatic narrative. But for me it's narrative. So I was writing novels, and I was in film school forever, for 7 years, you know, in Beijing. 4 years MA, 4 years BA, and 3 years MA. And I must say, I didn't do anything related to the film in the film school. I was totally terrified making film when I was in film school. It was like terrifying place. I think I was very worried of all kinds of cables. Like, you know, it's like cables, and I touch something, nothing gonna work. And because my background is a writer, very unpractical, impractical. So I tried 7 years to avoid making film in the film school. And I published like 3 novels, and I was publishing the essay in a weekly magazine about film. So it's more like a film critic and a writer rather than a filmmaker. And then I graduated from the Beijing Film Academy, and I didn't want to make film. I was scared of the whole financing bullshit. And so I stayed in Beijing for 2 more years. And one day I said, okay, I have published all my novels. I have nothing else to write. Now what I do? Either I make film or I leave China. And that was the moment I left China. So it's about 8 years ago. I left, and then I came to the UK for the UK National Film School. And so I was in the documentary directing department as a visiting scholar, which is like a scholar exchange from China. And I think that was the moment I said, shit, if I still haven't started to make film, then why I'm in the film school for 10 years, forever. So I stayed in the UK National Film School for 2 years, and that was the moment I feel really kind of urgency to either I do film or forever I am a writer.
At what age did you arrive to the United Kingdom?
Oh yeah, very old, like I was 29 or 30. Yeah. Now I'm 27, something like that. So my ideology and my vision about the world, I think more or less kind of shaped. So maybe a little bit different from when you are very young, when you're 19 or 18 or 20. I think there's kind of process to grow or mature your vision through experience. Now in my case, because I was writing forever, so I was very stubborn. My vision, my emotion towards country and people. And so in my case, the cinema is really a kind of suppressed expression from myself. Rather than, I do, of course, I experiment with cinema language, but most of documentary film are totally straightforward talking heads, straightforward interview, combined with poetic film language, which is more like self-made, bricolage, free form. But I think they're less so sophisticated. And I think recently, when I start to make a fiction film, I'm more aware of how to tell a story, rather than very primitive, strong expressions through a very direct interview. Primitive is very good energy as well, but I guess after a while, I think we need to find some kind of form to make these languages sustainable. And my experience is youth is not forever, so I cannot be forever young. So certain kind of energy is transformed to something else through the storytelling and the way you work with your materials. So that's more or less my background.
We'll show your first film. So.
Yeah. So you can see it's very humble and even naive. But anyway, let's yeah. The problem is everything's ready before the masterclass starts, and nothing gonna be ready during the masterclass. So now I don't know where this. Drag it on my own bottom.